Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senior Vice President, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, Mark DeCourcy.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome back. I hope everyone had those engaging working sessions that we had designed. And on your tables, I also want to mention something that we haven't mentioned today that's really important. It's information about the 2018 Institute for CSR. A few years ago, in partnership with the Washington Regional Association of Grantmakers and Johns Hopkins University, we created the Institute for CSR, and it's a practical, innovative, and affordable professional development program for CSR practitioners. The program is designed for and by those who practice in the field. So I hope you'll consider either joining the class of 2018 or perhaps sending one of your team members to it. I also want to just point out that you may have heard there's a party tonight. It's our annual Corporate Citizenship Gala. It is not in this building. All right, we've had a lot of people ask us about it. And it is actually at a place called the Showroom, which is a very cool place. It's on 1099 14th Street between 14 and L. So if you have already registered for that event, please don't stay here for it. Now I'd like to introduce our first luncheon discussion on empowering youth leaders to address the digital divide. This conversation will be led by 4-H youth leader Kyra Lee Harris, and she'll explore how Microsoft and the National 4-H Council's partnership brings access to broadband networks for education and business to all of our communities that still don't have it. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer Sarangelo, President and CEO of the National 4-H Council, Mary Snapp, who's the Corporate Vice President for Microsoft Philanthropies, and Kyra Lee Harris.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad to be here today with Jennifer Sarangelo and Mary Snapp to discuss how youth can be powerful leaders of community change, particularly in the area of digital skills. My name is Kyra Lee Harry, and I have been involved with 4-H since the 6th grade, and I know firsthand that it is an organization that believes strongly in the power of young people. Thanks to the skills I acquired in 4-H, at the age of 15, I was the youngest person to ever be appointed to a New York City community board. Just last year, I managed, marketed, and executed Community Board 9's first annual youth forum that engaged over 300 young people from across the 5 boroughs and informed them about internship opportunities, workplace etiquette, and the importance of civic engagement. In April of 2016, I was a New York City delegate for 4-H's National Youth Leadership Conference, where my group and I gave a PowerPoint presentation on bioterrorism and the Zika virus potential as a threat at the United States Department of Health and Human Services. These opportunities have led me to understand the importance of all youth acquiring digital skills, particularly when they are applied to positive change. Today, I am studying Business and Technology Management at New York University's Tandon School of Engineering. Yay! Thank you. Yay. So, Ms. Jennifer, for those who may not know 4-H as well as I do, can you please share with us your story and tell us more about it?
Sure. So 4-H was really founded on the idea that young people have an innate ability to understand new technology and apply it in the real world. So 100 years ago, when we were founded, the most important technology our country needed here in the US was agriculture. We needed to feed our growing population. Today, that includes digital technology and opportunities for young people to be in new technology-related careers. And we're excited about the opportunity to be able to offer that today in a very relevant way. So we serve today about 6 million young people, and we prepare them for careers in leadership today and careers tomorrow. And for us, that's real-world application in things like agriculture, in digital technology, and in other robotics and engineering skills and careers.
Definitely. 4-H has definitely given us a foundation to venture out and explore those different skills that we have now acquired. And Miss Mary, what is Microsoft's mission, Microsoft Philanthropies' mission?
Well, the mission of Microsoft Philanthropies is really the same as the company's, which is to ensure that every person and organization on the planet can achieve more. And we know that with Microsoft Philanthropies that we help build out the company mission because it needs to apply to everyone, not just customers, not just other businesses. And when I think about the work we do in philanthropies, it's really, we have 4 major strategic areas of investment. And you'll see lots of great overlap with 4-H. The first is digital skills. We know that it's really important for everyone to have digital skills to be future ready in the 21st century. 16-year-olds to 60-year-olds. And those skills need to be stepping stair skills as we go along. We also are very focused on what we call career pathways. And that is really providing technical skills, some of which are digital, and basically mapping job seekers to employers in those areas with a high school degree, but not necessarily a college degree, so certificate programs or 2-year degrees. The third area we focus on is nonprofits, broadly building out the technology capacity of nonprofits so that they can serve their beneficiaries better. And then finally, a strategic area of investment is our own employees. We have a giving program in which about 74% of our employees in the United States participate every year. And together with the company, because we have a match in the United States, we raised $142 million for 19,000 nonprofits with our employee program. Wow. So those are the 4 primary areas in which we work.
That's great. And Microsoft and 4-H might seem like an unlikely pair. So can you please tell us the reason why you decided to work together?
Well, it's a great organization. Let's just start with that. About 2 years ago, not surprisingly, I would say, for many of you, after the election in the United States, we realized that a lot of the groups with whom we work, the nonprofits, if you were to chart their greatest impact, it was on the East and the West Coast. And we wanted to find a great organization known for youth leadership that we could reach all counties in the country. At the same time, we launched an initiative called Rural Airband, where we're trying to bring airband and broadband connectivity to 23.4 million Americans who don't have it, largely in rural places. And we knew that once broadband came, there'd be a great opportunity to work with 4-H on the ground with digital skills.
So, you know, when we heard what Microsoft was thinking about and their commitment to having young people be at the forefront and leaders in that process, it just made a lot of sense for us to partner together with Microsoft and 4-H. But I wonder if you have any thoughts about that, Kiralee.
Absolutely. The 21st century is defined by many innovative, creative, and just driven young people who were born into the age of technology. Now, it is very beneficial for us to be able to use our skills that we know and our knowledge of the technology that we are being introduced to help build each other, to help build our leadership skills, to help build our confidence, and overall just to help bring up the younger community as well as even the older adults who might not know the different technological advances that are taking place here today. So, Ms. Jennifer, what would this look like on ground communities?
So it's actually pretty simple, but it will have big impact. So together, 4-H and Microsoft are convening and empowering young people to come together with stakeholders in their community, could be elected officials, could be other leaders, and identify what are the biggest issues we are facing as a community. And then with the young people's ingenuity, thinking how might digital skills or learning new digital things, or how could technology help us solve that problem? Then we're giving them the ability to go and work in their communities to solve that issue. Well, one of the things we're so thankful about at 4-H to have the partnership with Microsoft is we know a lot about youth leadership, and we have a lot of great on-the-ground educators working in technology, but there's so much training and opportunity that they're bringing to this to help be a true on-the-ground partner. We're excited that through that partnership, we'll then take that in a very authentic way out into communities. What I loved when we launched this, Brad Smith and I were here in Washington, we launched this a couple of months ago, and I love what he said that day, and that is that we're going to unleash the power of America's teenagers to impact America's communities. So we're really excited about that. It's fun to see what they are going to do with technology to make our future better in communities in a way that makes sense to them.
And if I could just, Kira, one of the things that was the most fun as we kicked off the partnership was bringing about 40 young 4-H leaders from 6 or 8 different communities around the United States to the Microsoft corporate campus for a 2 or 3 day envisioning session on what they might do with technology. And one of the things that was really the most fun about it, we, at the same time, were having a state government affairs retreat, and we brought in consultants from around the country and our own state government affairs people, and the 4-H leaders sat for a couple of hours in that program and learned how companies work with policy issues and government, and I think that was a really great learning experience for them. And they could take that back to their communities. And at the same time, then, they spent a lot of time talking about what kinds of projects that they were going to launch as a result of this partnership.
So we're kind of excited. It's early returns, you know, it's early on. We're still really building this. But what we're hearing from the communities is examples. Like in North Dakota, our young people are thinking about how they can be the mentors of adults, especially immigrant, new people to their community that need to learn digital job skills, and how they can be a part of that solution and help those people find jobs. Another exciting idea that we've heard from our kids in Maine, in the state of Maine, is they're looking at how technology, either apps or technology, can help them solve a problem of getting the fresh food from their ag food chain into their food banks at the right time in real time. So they're trying to figure out how to support that important infrastructure there in their community.
Definitely, and that is why it is so beneficial to give us the opportunity to lead and teach when it comes to technology, because we are savvy, yes, and we are able to coach those younger children and even those adults to help push them to understand what is taking place now. So, Miss Mary, which communities are you partnering, and why did you choose those communities?
Well, we worked with 4-H to pick the communities where there was a great presence and where we were trying to drive things forward. But there still were a couple of factors that were important for us as we picked the communities. We wanted to ensure that where we did our first pilots with the Rural Air Band Initiative would be some of the places where we were able to bring the 4-H partnership. We also knew that there were places where Microsoft has very large data centers. And data centers take up a lot of ground and a lot of energy, and they're big buildings, and people outside of that building don't really know what Microsoft does there. It is just this, literally a huge black box. And so we wanted to pick a couple of the places where we had data centers to also ensure that we started a 4-H program. So the combination of places where we would pilot and bring broadband connectivity and our data centers, which are located primarily in rural areas, were naturals for us. But on the other hand, there were a couple of places we picked that were on your, on your radar screen that we hadn't identified, where you knew that we had some great opportunities.
Definitely so. So, Ms. Jennifer, what do you see as the role of young people in helping to transform their communities?
Well, you can imagine being in the business we're in, which is developing young people. We believe they have the ability to lead today, just like you're doing in Brooklyn. And we do that in a very hands-on way. So Kira Lee's a great example because she just described to you and shared a little bit about how she's literally today leading in her community, and we're supporting her doing that at the local level. And that hands-on, practical skill building leads to things that are even beyond the technical skills that young people are going to need, the teamwork, the resilience, how to overcome obstacles. That's what young people like Kira Lee and our alumni tell us they learn in 4-H. So what we're excited about how the young people can truly impact today is really twofold. One is that because we are coming at this not from Microsoft and National 4-H Council sitting in Washington or Redmond and deciding what these communities need. We're asking the young people to find that out themselves. And by doing that, we know that we're going to get a very authentic and meaningful place to make an impact. Second, we're really 4-H in communities is a trusted partner of those communities. They're well known, people know us, our kids are a part of the community, and so with those adults and stakeholders and the Microsoft leadership, we'll be able to make what we hope will be sustainable impact in those communities because it will be coming from them, from trusted partners.
Definitely. So, and even as a young person here today and understanding and learning more about Microsoft Philanthropies and how they're trying to build digital skills in areas or in communities who are not able to fully get the experience or what we are available to, I think is a really great, and that is why this partnership is so critical. And lastly, Ms. Mary, why is Microsoft Philanthropies investing in the digital skills of youth today? Isn't that problem solved already?
Well, if it was just you and everyone was like you, I might say that it was solved. But it's unfortunately, no, we're not even, and I'm only going to speak about the United States. But let me first say that as we head into the 21st century jobs, there are a lot of jobs today that won't exist in the future. There are a lot of jobs that will be adapted, and there will be brand new jobs created. And the most important thing for young people to learn are exactly the things that Jennifer identified. The ability to be adaptive and to learn leadership skills. We kind of talk about it as the 4 C's. The 4 C's being knowing how to communicate well, knowing how to collaborate with other people, being creative, and then the last one is some amount of critical thinking. And we actually know that computers and coding and learning math just really develops that critical thinking. And that's really important. But in terms of digital skills, well, there's the 23.4 million people who don't have broadband at all. There's also what we know is that 70% of new jobs will require some STEM skills, 70%. And we know that today, only 40% of high schools in the United States teach any computer science, even basic computer science. About 10% of high schools teach an AP class. So we started a program 2 or 3 years ago, an advocacy program. In 2013, there were only 12 states in the United States that counted a computer science class towards a graduation requirement in math and science. So even if you had it, it was purely an elective. Today, there are 35 states that count computer science, and now we really need to build teacher capacity so that we have teachers who actually know how to teach it, so certification kinds of programs. And we also need to continue to build that demand for teaching computer science, and we're not there yet. We are not even close to there yet. So when we think about future ready, we know that this critical thinking that comes with computer science and coding really gets us a long way.
I can definitely, thank you so much, and I can personally attest to how critical these digital skills are. As I pursue my degree in business and technology management, I know that my future career will depend on it. But I also recognize that the future of every young person from across the country in urban, suburban, or even rural areas can definitely benefit from these critical skills and from these digital skills and just learning more about computer science in general. And that is why this partnership between Microsoft and the 4-H Council is so critical. Well, Ms. Jennifer and Mary, we thank you so much for sharing with us today, and we look forward to hearing more about this impactful partnership. And thank you to you all.
Thanks to Kira Lee.
Thanks to Kira Lee.
Je m'appelle Dr Duxenje Jean-Pierre, je suis le chef des services de néonatologie. Au cas d'une hémorragie du post-partum, on aura besoin de transfuser la maman qui saigne ou qui a saigné. Et cette transfusion doit être faite en urgence. Quelque chose a été fait par les médecins ou une autre personne soignante, la maman peut décéder.
When you talk about surgery, when you talk about maternity, when you talk about injury, all those phenomena in our lives need and require blood.
So the challenge in Rwanda is, although they have good coverage, it is a hilly country, the infrastructure, most of the roads are not paved, and so during rainy season it's difficult to pass.
Imagine a situation where a mother needs blood. She's been hemorrhaging, and she needs blood in the next 25 minutes, otherwise it will be too late. Tell me, what other technology today can you use to deliver that product?
We believe that the drone technology is critical, particularly in circumstances where a life is at stake, where every minute counts, and you can't get through a road because it's impassable.
Our ultimate goal in Rwanda is to put every one of Rwanda's about 11 million citizens within 15 to 30 minutes delivery of any essential medical product they could need.
We are not only contemplating blood servicing, we are also contemplating vaccine distribution. We are also contemplating any other good which can be transported by these drones.
One of the things that we want to really emphasize is that it's now not just possible but affordable to provide that instant, reliable access to medical products, even for people in rural and hard-to-reach areas.
The government of Rwanda is a visionary in taking this extra step, and now we're going to help save millions of lives throughout the world as we expand this idea.
Pretty powerful stuff. Thank you, UPS, and thank you, Ed Martinez. Please join us on the stage. And as they join us on the stage, the next panel, how about another round of applause for Kira Lee, huh? I think there's probably a lot of organizations in this room that would want to meet you after graduation, all right? And we're serious about that. So we want to thank UPS again for sharing the video, and this is our final conversation of the afternoon on this stage. I'd like to invite our panelists to come up and take their seats. Through co-creation and partnerships, these corporate citizens are building a better future for all. To facilitate the Opportunity Forward panel, please welcome Tony Carvajal, Executive Vice President of the Florida Chamber of Commerce and President of the Chamber Florida Commerce Foundation. And joining Tony are some of our partners here at the Corporate Citizenship Center, Ed Martinez of the UPS Foundation, Rob Valentine of the Dow Chemical Company, and president of their foundation, and Kim Keller from Johnson & Johnson. Please welcome our panel.
So I want to do two things. First, thank Mark and everybody else with the U.S. Chamber Foundation for everything that's been going on over the last 2 days, and Mark, you personally, for putting me after Kira Lee. I don't know if I should thank you or not for that, but what an impressive individual. I've noticed a few things, not only with the way she carried herself. We're going to cover a lot of things that have already been discussed. I also noticed her notes were a lot smaller than mine, so apologize as I go through this. Opportunity Forward in action. That's what we're talking about at this moment. We've discussed throughout the event goals, values, cultures, strategies, things that we want to do, things that you're doing, future-proofing. We're capping it off now with a great panel talking about action at the community level. And I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves individually. We'll start with Kim, if that's okay. Kim with Johnson & Johnson. And by way of introduction, what I've asked them to consider is, so what is your company's goals, commitment? What is it that you're doing from a community perspective? And where have you placed your leadership and focus through the company or through the foundation, whatever you'd like to talk about.
Great, Mark. Thank you very much. As mentioned, my name is Kim Keller. I work within the Johnson & Johnson Global Community Impact Organization, which is our social philanthropy arm. Been with Johnson & Johnson for 22 years and in this role for 5 years. And I'm sure everybody in the room feels, but I have one of the best jobs in the world. Love it very much. At Johnson & Johnson, we blend heart, science, and ingenuity to profoundly change the trajectory of health for humanity. And we ask ourselves, our 130,000 employees in 60 countries every day, how can we show up at our best? And some of those things include our commitment to the 2030 UN Sustainable Development Goals in the 5 key areas around environmental health, maternal and child health, essential surgery, global disease challenges, and healthy workforce. It includes our commitment to preparing and nurturing young girls, women, and other underrepresented groups worldwide as they consider and pursue careers in STEM, except at J&J we call it STEM 2D, science, technology, engineering, math, manufacturing, and design. Those are key areas for our businesses. Our work in infectious diseases, which includes leadership to mobilize the industry in support of the private sector roundtable, which is working with the global health security agenda, and our sponsorship of the 2017 film with CNN, The Unseen Enemy. A new thing for us this year is our Generation H Challenge, a social venture challenge mining locally tailored, globally relevant solutions to enduring health challenges. And finally, our work supporting and championing those on the front lines of human caring, delivering care with partners from broad as Save the Children and Operation Smile, all the way down to areas of need, including obstetric fistula and disaster response. And we ask ourselves and our employees every day, how do we show up as J&J on the best day ever?
Kim, thank you so much for sharing that from a company perspective and an employee. We're going to follow up a little bit more on those assets. Rob, how about your perspective from Dow?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just happy to be here today representing both Dow and our foundation. And we really come together and believe that science and humanity can really solve anything. And so we work very hard. A lot of times in our past, we would talk about corporate social responsibility. And we think that corporate social responsibility makes it more about what we are as a corporation, or responsibility as if we have to do that. So we've really shifted our conversation to be more about global social impact. And that really is that intersection that happens between what we do in the citizenship space, what we do in innovation with our products around the world, but also what we do with sustainability. When we go specifically into our citizenship strategy, we talk really in 3 areas. And we've really labeled them around solutions, because we think that the important thing that we can do is be a collaborator in our community to bring solutions. And we do it in 3 areas. The first one being workforce solutions. Work very closely in our communities about how we can prepare this next generation for STEM careers. We work very closely in our specific communities, and we're trying to tailor more in these communities. We're located in 189 communities in 34 countries around the world. So we're working very closely with our communities on change that they need that's specific to them. And I'll give a couple examples of that later. And then the third area that's gotten a lot of focus is what we call business solutions. And this is really where we've worked very closely with FSG and are trying to bring together both business impact and social impact. We went out with a quick story. We went out with a fund this year of $1 million and said to our business units, please come forward with ideas that you have of where there's social and business impact. A year ago when we did it, we actually didn't even receive an entire $1 million worth of grants. This year we had over $4 million submitted by our business units. So this is a way for us to engage to create both business and social impact.
Thank you so much, Rob. Eduardo, I know with the UPS Foundation, first of all, fascinating video, and we're going to talk a little bit about the drone project at the moment, but I think when we were on our planning call, we were talking about from the first day your CEO took impact as one of its key measures. Tell us a little bit about
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to thank Mark, the Chamber, really, and all of you that are here in the audience having this conversation on how we can work collectively. Love to be here with our panelists as well, and I get the honor of leading the UPS Foundation, which is, it's a global foundation. Our philanthropy, or what I call venture philanthropy, spreads across 170 countries. We support 4,000 organizations, and we mobilize 3 million service hours from UPSers every year. So with that, my job, I think, is trying to help the company play to its strengths. So you saw the video about humanitarian crisis, about solving public health issues, but using our supply chain expertise to do that. I mean, our overall mission is to build stronger, safer, healthier communities, and that essentially inspires our people. And where there is a healthy community and a prosperous community, you're going to have a prosperous business. And that was a belief that our founder had. To your question about measurement and impact, you know, our founder, Jim Casey, had a saying that in God we trust, everything else we measure. And so really, as now everything's come full circle, and our jobs are really about creating social impact, then it's all about the measurement. Mm-hmm. It's all about dealing collectively, about dealing with partners that can hold themselves accountable and measure the impact, because that's the way we're going to advance the ball.
So talk a little bit more about the drone program. We saw the video already, and how did you come up to that? I mean, clearly it plays on your supply chain experience.
It does.
How are you applying that as an opportunity forward for the community and your company?
Well, you know, and it combines something that you said about shared value, right? So we look for that shared value opportunity. So that's why we invest in the environment. Obviously, UPS has a very large carbon footprint. We invest in volunteerism, because we know that without volunteers, nonprofits could not exist. And that mobilizes over 440,000 UPSers worldwide. Community safety is another focus area, which embodies humanitarian relief and road safety. And finally, diversity and inclusion. So the drone program, the medical drone program, really was an outgrowth of our humanitarian relief program. And we were very focused years ago on response. But then we began to understand that essentially by preparing communities, it's really a down payment on recovery and a deposit on response. So we began to prepare communities more and really working with the Chamber Foundation in work all over the world, preparing SMEs, and then in post-crisis recovery. Well, we found out more information around how critical supply chain is to most humanitarian crises. When you talk to the United Nations, you'll find that 60 to 70% of every dollar that's invested in humanitarian crisis goes to supply chain. So we saw an opportunity to really look at this work year-round. And we looked at it now from a public health standpoint. And we get involved in what they call quiet emergencies. So another big challenge, particularly in developing markets, is that last mile delivery. It's a challenge for us. It's a challenge for most companies doing work in certain difficult areas of the world. And so the drone, and I'm very proud of that because there's a lot of companies and a lot of entities talk about drones, even my own company. And yet we were able to launch this program collectively, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, with government, with the private sector, with civil society, with an innovative startup, and solve that problem in that way for that last mile delivery, because it is a very difficult part. And at the same time, the company is learning as well, and we all are learning from this experience.
Kim, let me jump to you for a second, because I think that there's some disaster recovery issues and also some supply chain and pandemic approaches. But you used some words in your intro comments about leveraging your assets, your relationships, and your power to convene and work in communities. How did that play into some of the choices? And tell us of some of the programs that you actually did.
So, you know, I'll come at it from our group, the group that I work with, which is Global Community Impact. And people often ask, why global community? And it goes to some of your questions. We are a global company, so the work we do is focused globally. However, you can't do anything without taking the community's context, as you mentioned, into play. So we have that as part of our informational bias. And then impact. Can't do anything without measuring it, right? You know, no pictures without stories, no stories without pictures. Those are key things. And we have to understand the communities that we live and work in, which is part of our credo. So we always go back to that. Working to meet the needs of the communities within their context. Scalable programs are amazing, but if you don't understand what's happening in the community, you'll never be able to scale it and have it be sustainable. And we work with long-standing, long-term partners in the communities that understand and bring that context to us, because we're not everywhere. And the work that we do is in places where it's most needed, not just where we have employees and facilities. So that's really, whether we're working with expectant mothers in India and South Africa with our mobile messaging programs that really meet their needs and give them the information they need at the moment, or whether we're working with mental health patients in Ghana doing product delivery, access pricing for product, as well as rehabilitation programs and training for them from an occupational therapy sense, or working with hospital administrators, helping to provide them the leadership and management training that they need based on their community's needs to build their sustainability within their organizations so they can support their patients. That's really where we focus on the communities. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I think it did. But Rob, you and I were talking before the event also, very similar comments about what Dow is doing and how you engage. So tell us a little bit about some of the programs where you've leveraged your assets, your relationships, and the power that you bring to the table.
Absolutely. I went to a great session yesterday on healthy living. And health and health care in the economy is really a big issue, I think, for all of us as corporations and really all of us as community members. So we have created a community collaborative where we are building a coalition of people that are interested in health and in the economy. And so we're looking at not only helping change people's lives as far as health because of all the issues going on, but we're pulling together all the universities, the community colleges to talk about what we're doing for healthcare careers, because we know that that is one of the largest growing areas, especially in many of our communities, is healthcare jobs. And so we want to support education for healthcare careers. We want to try to work with the hospital systems on doing two things: improving quality, but also reducing costs. And again, this isn't something that we can go out and mandate as a corporation. It's important that we come together, and we're finding that we can be a convener by calling people to the table, because change is going to happen as we all work together. And then the last one I would say is that health is also is an economic driver as well, not only on the cost saving side, but also on, like I said, jobs, but also locating companies that are working in the healthcare space into our communities.
Yeah, so it's opportunity in both directions. And that direction is actually something that I want to ask each of you on, and we can go in whatever order you'd like. So how do ideas like these are huge ideas, some that are driven by the community, some that are driven by your employees, how do they bubble up? What advice, comments, ideas do you want to share with the folks that are in here so that they can replicate it or work with other partners in communities or governments? Thoughts, ideas?
I think we get them from all those stakeholders, from our partners, from our people, from the staff at the foundation. And I think that's important, from our business partners, from our customers, all of our key stakeholders. I mean, you really have to be connected to your community at the grassroots to understand local challenges, but also stay at a level where you can drive solutions, let's say, to the Sustainable Development Goals, and drive your local engagement to those higher level global goals that are really systemic in their change and impact.
One of the challenges or joys that we have at J&J is our employee base, and you mentioned that. 130,000 employees around the globe that are so passionate about everything that they do, and the community involvement is that as well. And that's, I think, one of the ways our Gen H Challenge came around, was working to improve the trajectory of health using social innovation of internal and external ideas. And they've submitted these grants. We've gotten over 300 proposals for this program that have come from internal and external, working with partnerships across the globe. We have internal business units who are doing R&D on missing and unthinkable challenges around expandable retractors, working with some partners, doing some work for obstetric fistula patients within an R&D space. These are spaces where you'd never have things that employees are passionate about. Some recent examples out of the disasters. We have 3 programs that have stood up from employees that we've engaged the whole corporation with now. A family-to-family shipping program. People in Puerto Rico wanted to send stuff, people that are from Puerto Rico in the US and people that are in the US that have friends in Puerto Rico wanted to send things down. How do we use our supply chain to let them ship to their families on the island where other groups aren't going? Home share. We've got an Airbnb for J&J employees. I have space. Somebody in Puerto Rico needs a space. They can come on and visit me and stay in my spare room. You know, these are things that have bubbled up internally. But we also work with our key long-standing partners to understand those needs, like you mentioned. Where do they come from, working with our global teams on what the needs are and how do we implement them?
A couple examples I would give is to really ask our employees. The employees have ideas, and two examples. One is that we have a shuttle that goes between Louisiana, Texas, and Michigan. And it's a 40-passenger plane that takes, because we have so many people in those states. And an employee came forward and said, why don't we work with the Corporate Angel Network? They had read this article about the Corporate Angel Network, which brings cancer patients on our flight. So we had more than 1,200 people last year on this flight. I mean, it was a great example, and somebody else came up with that, one of our employees. The other example I would give is, you know, we talk a lot about random acts of STEM. It's a phrase that I use a lot because we get so many different opportunities that come forward on what are you going to do in STEM. We went out and we asked our employees, and we had over 2,200 employees that are volunteering in classrooms, a lot of scientists, a lot of engineers. We're trying to get our welders, the folks that are working in our plants, volunteering in classrooms. And what we're doing is we don't have a set program, or they're coming up with the ideas of what they can do. How do they work alongside the teacher? How do they work with a lot of the great nonprofits to bring activities? So again, I think the big deal is to ask our employees and listen to them.
So there's a lot of positive things that can come up with the muscle that you bring, the social muscle that you bring to the table, your commitment to impact. How about some things that are standing in the way sometimes? Some trends or issues that you see that are either making it harder to do social impact or that may be causing disruptions inside or outside of your organizations? Any thoughts on that?
I'll throw one out there.
Yeah.
Budgets.
Budgets. Tell us a little bit more. I mean, I understand the money concept, but...
In our side, you know, philanthropy is very important, but it always gets buried. And so it's easy to get overlooked. So we constantly fight to make sure that the partnerships are available. When things like Harvey, Irma, Maria, and the earthquakes happen, you know, money comes. And you guys see that, I'm sure. Money comes and it's much easier, but how do you keep that consistent track going for preparedness and resiliency in all different areas? It's just a challenge. I'm sure you have.
I would say continuing to get our employees to volunteer out in the communities. People have gotten very, very busy in their lives, and so we are working very hard at figuring out other opportunities of where they can volunteer as a family, as an example. We're hearing more and more, especially from the younger generation, that they want to do that together, where before I think we used to probably have more time to be able to do that separately. So I think engaging families. I think the other one for us is if there's a lot of issues in the world, and we think that in order to change those, we can't do that by ourselves. So we're also trying to move our volunteerism strategy down into the community and with students. So we're going to launch some student service projects next year where we're going to bring kids from our local communities out to be a part of the solutions, as we heard 4-H earlier doing similar things like that. I think that's really important. And if we don't engage that population, I think we have the potential to lose them.
Thanks.
You know, as I look at the challenge that would really, if you overcome it, would have the biggest payback, it's trying to sponsor more collective action, trying to get more companies in the private sector working together with partners to solve big problems. Not only that, but also dropping down and working with SMEs and bringing them along. I think that if we can solve those challenges, we're going to get the biggest reward. But running a coalition, a group of companies together, and we all do that, is difficult. It's difficult to sustain them. And so I feel, and that's where I spend most of my time, is trying to build those kind of collective action, that kind of coalition. And that could really connect people as well. But I think that's where you would have the biggest payoff, is if we can start working more closely, more together.
And could I jump in on
that?
Well,
please.
Ed, I think that's great. It's very true. I mean, we all know the saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's one of the areas that we have some focus on. I mentioned before the private sector roundtable, which is in support of the global health security agenda. Again, it's trying to mobilize industry to help countries prevent, detect, and respond to health-related crises. And it came out of Ebola and Zika. And our Alan Tenenberg and David Barish are working together to bring corporations into that, to work with the governments who are engaged in the global health security agenda and drive the business cases, the risk analysis at the government level. I know they're focusing now on Uganda, and how can they help Uganda become more resilient, working in partnership with the government. So it's not just corporates together, but it's the whole public-private partnership.
And we're very proud to be engaged with Alan and David as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's a perfect example of going after some big challenges for the world.
So you've got all different types of organizations in here. Some are businesses that are either in the startup, corporate level like you. There are organizations like chambers. What I'm hearing you say is that that partnership is a big part of this, but how do we all come to the table with our different sizes? Any advice for those of us? I mean, think about, so the Florida Chamber, not a small organization, very big state, very important. You should all come, by the way, this winter, visit often. How do we all come to the table with the same focus? You know, I walk up and Dow's sitting across from me and I'm a startup. I might be a little intimidated. Any advice from any of you on how to make this a community impact and an opportunity?
I think it's inviting people to the discussion. I think we've gotten to a place where we're not having open discussions about what we may agree or what we disagree on. And I'll give you an example is on the LGBT issue that we heard earlier today, by the way, a fantastic presentation about what's going on in Texas, is that we realized that we were way out in front from some of our communities on what we're doing around LGBT inclusion. And we realized that we needed to start having workshops. So our communities were seeing in the media what we were saying, what we were doing, how we were advocating, along with all those things you heard this morning on the LGBT. But we needed to bring our community together and to have that dialogue. And that means having a dialogue with people that sometimes don't agree with you and those that do, that disagree with you. But again, having that dialogue, I think, is the greatest thing that we could do right now.
I think from a corporate perspective, having some humility. You know, we don't have all the answers. We know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know. And that's a very tried and old statement, but it's true. And we have to listen to those people that are out there in the communities and take that on board. And hopefully that makes that inviting environment that you were mentioning.
Well, I think that's why convenings like this are so important, right? Because we all come together and we all get to evaluate these issues and create partnerships and network. And that's so important. But I think you need to meet, let's say, an SME where they are. You know, Mark and I were talking earlier today about, you know, being a purpose-driven company. Well, you know, the small and medium-sized businesses, they may not really appreciate those kind of concepts that you know, we're sort of tossing around here. So I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you need to meet these companies or these organizations where they are, and then bring them along. It's you know, the other hat that I wear is as Chief Diversity Officer for the company. And so when I look at, you know, small businesses, immigrant-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, multicultural businesses, for me, it's about creating value for them and for the company by bringing them along, by mentoring. So I think that has a lot to do with it, is really trying to talk their language, seeing them, meeting them where they are.
So one thing that stands out from each of your organizations, to me at least, is your lasting impact. You're not just flying in and flying out, pardon the drone example there, but you are really staying for the long term. Some of that is discipline of focus. A panel earlier this morning talked about the importance of that. Tell us a little bit about how you make decisions, don't make decisions. How do you leverage that at the community level? I mean, any thoughts or advice for us?
I'll give a quick example. Many of us in the room work with First Robotics, and we heard about this program 4 or 5 years ago. Outstanding program. And I could give you the stats of what we did or the teams, but what I'd really like to tell you is about one of our employees' kids. And the kid said, there is no way I'm going to be an engineer. That's what my mom and dad do. Okay, his dad is one of our executives, and he was an engineer. And he said, I am not going to be an engineer. So he goes and joins a First Robotics team. Now, you probably know where the story is going to go. Not only was he on the First Robotics team, he changed his major from sociology to engineering, and he just finished his first internship at Toyota and he is going to go into a STEM career. That is an example of, to me, is where we got away from the fact that he was on a team to the fact that he is now, pursuing that STEM career. So those are the kind of things that I know. We used to talk a lot about checkbook philanthropy, and a lot of folks here in the room know that, and it was really more about the dollars that we gave. We really don't ever want to see anyone holding a check up anymore, because it's really not about the check. It's about how do we measure that outcome and then that impact, which isn't easy, by the way.
Yeah. Having been, as an electrical engineer and having mentored teams and been involved with my child through FIRST, I love it. But just an example for us, I've mentioned our work in obstetric fistula. If you don't know what that is, we can talk about that later. We've been engaged in it for over 20 years because it's a lost cause that's a very hidden that most people have never heard of. It's a small community that's working to reduce the backlog of over 2 million women that need surgery, and prevention is needed to keep it from happening again. And we bring a really unique focus on our ability to support that through our surgical training and our sutures, and it's really important. And those are the kind of partnerships that we learn and understand, and as the community and the need changes, our focus changes with it. Just another example.
Mm-hmm. The UPS Foundation is 66 years young, and so we've had different focus areas along the way when we were a US-centric company as we became more global. But probably the most important initiative that we've done for the foundation and our working communities to be relevant, to be a strategic partner to the business, is to really focus on areas that connect to the business, that connect to our people. And that, I think, will allow us, and has allowed us, to have a multiplier effect, because it's not just about dollars, it's about expertise, it's about resources, about flying goods and that are needed in a disaster through our planes. And so I think that's probably the most important point that we've done, is to really play to our strengths as a foundation and become more integrated into the business, into understanding where the business is going and understand what the business needs in those markets. We all know that there was a time, many, many years ago, there was a big barrier between philanthropy and the company's commercial side. And I do believe that there needs to be a lot of respect for that divide, but if you can, again, try to leverage more your company's resource and expertise in solving the problems that they're looking at, you will be able to mobilize your people, mobilize your stakeholders.
Yeah, it's somewhat flipping what you said before, using your assets, leveraging your assets and your expertise and your relationships to the community level, but it works on the other direction too. Any great examples, and I apologize for surprising you with this question, but any great examples of how your company's been disrupted or changed over time that from one of the activities that the foundation has done that has really changed your culture internally, or how you work, how you think, how you talk?
I'll jump out there. It's not necessarily from we don't have a foundation, but not necessarily even from our corporate social philanthropy group, but as a result of HIV access pricing that's been going on within J&J for many, many years, a group has developed from within J&J to take the R&D focus of our pharmaceuticals, is where it started, toward the Ebola and Zika viruses, multi-drug resistant tuberculosis as well, and the new drug that came out a couple years ago. And how do we make that a more sustainable model, bringing the R&D side to the table, again, bringing all the strengths in areas where there's not as much of a business case. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of people wanting to buy in the developing world the Zika virus, but it's totally needed. So how do we work to develop that and bring that to the table, and then combine the work that the philanthropic side and the business side do together to drive those things forward and work in partnership. Still managing that line, but we're definitely much more in partnership than we were before.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Well, in terms of disrupting the business, I think more helping the business. And I'll give you a perfect example, is our work in road safety. And we started this program called the UPS Road Code a number of years ago, maybe 9 years ago now. And it's all about training young drivers. I say young because in some parts of the world where the program is today, it's not just teenagers. But in the US, it's the #1 killer of teens, is road accidents. So we launched this program with the Boys and Girls Club of America. And it uses simulators, really sophisticated simulators. And since its launch, we are now teaching the program through our people in the UK, in Canada, in China, in Dubai, and in Mexico. But when our health and safety group, which prides itself, I mean, we literally have probably 20,000 drivers that have never had an accident in 25 years. So our health and safety group is, I mean, that's what they do. They looked at our simulators and they said, you know what, I mean, we could use that. We could use that with our drivers. And so that was another great connectivity to what the foundation's doing that really helped the business.
The example I would give is probably in the, we're a big manufacturer, and so a lot of folks today are in education are really pushing everyone to get your 4-year degree. And this is more of a disruptive thing from outside, but we needed to go back and really work with elementary schools, middle school, high schools, with the importance of skilled trades jobs. We recently, a couple years ago, actually launched a new apprenticeship program. And again, that's bringing back something that we had years ago and that we still have in other parts of the world, but we needed to bring that here to the US. So I'd say the disruptive part is letting people know there are great jobs in skilled trades, and we want them to know what kinds of career options there are from that.
So it's easy to talk about the communities that we serve and the places that we are changing. I'm going to throw in one other community, and that's our employees. I think each of you do this also because it makes people better. Looking around the audience, there's still a few of us that are boomers that are going to be around for a little while. There's Xers that are engaged in this. There's millennials. There are some cultural issues. There are ways to make an impact on all this. Advice or guidance, anything that you've learned from your corporate social responsibilities or your foundation roles on how to engage all these folks? Anything?
I would throw one out on retirees. I think that we have lots of retirees around the US and around the world, and we have in pockets where they're going out and volunteering, but we believe that there is a huge opportunity. I have a meeting on Monday with our local United Way and our corporate headquarters to say, how can we reach the 6,000 to 7,000 retirees, but in an organized fashion? Because it's easy to say, go to a website and go sign up to volunteer, but we all know that's a lot harder than what it, than just to go do that. So I think we're excited about trying to bring the retirees in, but be very purposeful in helping them activate that purpose so that they become more involved in the community.
Do you have a good network of those retirees in terms of you know where they are and they stay communicating with you?
Absolutely. We keep in touch with them on a regular basis through different communications, through government relations where we utilize them for getting messages out. But yeah, we have a great network. We just have not activated their purpose to become better volunteers.
I think for us, bridging the generational gap really goes back to our credo. Because it's so embedded in our credo and our different corporate cultures, even though each of the operating companies has a different culture, the credo is still central to it. And so giving back is a part of who we are in our biology. And that really does help to cut across geographies and generations and giving that focus. But you kind of mentioned it. You have to have a plan, because you can't just get employees engaged because they'll go all over the place. So that's something that we still struggle with and we're getting better with. But you get them engaged and then help them focus that energy.
You know, I tell you, I agree with you on retirees. I mean, we need to do a better job with our retirees, but we have discovered a tremendous opportunity with them. In terms of looking at our workforce and how it's evolving, I find that, the new UPSers that are joining us, the millennials, call them whatever you like. I mean, it's just a burst of energy to our volunteerism, to our engagement in the community, and I see it from the diversity and inclusion side as well as from our local engagement, and this is really around the world. So for me, this is just incredible energy, and it's just mixing up with our multiple generations of UPSers this is a company like yours. We're lifers. This is my 41st year with the company. Started unloading when I was 16 years old. And there's a lot of, that's not an anomaly. There's a lot of UPSers like that. And so for me, it's just been great to see that.
So I want to go back to something I touched on earlier about success and lasting impact. You guys are humble, but some of the statements when we were on the call about how you measure these things, these are not easy things to measure, but 20 million hours by 2020, 1 billion lives impacted, changing the trajectory of the communities we work on. Those are big. those are huge. How do we make that real at the community level? What is going on that you can translate something that big to the communities that are in the U.S., the communities across the globe?
One person at a time. Making sure that we've talked about getting them engaged in what's happening to them, because if you don't get them engaged, you don't understand the true needs, and it'll never be sustainable. Because it's not just about getting them engaged and affecting them, it's helping them make that sustainable and that change sustainable. Helping share the culture with them of giving back. To treat them, send them home, help them find others to be treated, or whatever the situation is.
As part of our 2025 goals, we have said we are going to impact 1 billion people around the world in the next, now it's 8 years, we've been doing it for 2 years. But it used to be that we would talk about engaging employees for impact, but it's really about engaging employees, customers, and communities for impact. So we're not going to do this alone. We want to do it with other corporations. We want to engage our customers in new ways because they're looking for innovative ways of doing it as well. So when we have these targets, it's really about how we can all work together to truly have that impact.
Yes. I mean, data science is so connected to measurement. And so, for us, having access to data, both from a workforce metric standpoint as well as trying to impact community, is so important. On the measurement side, I mean, we all know how difficult it is to truly measure social impact. For us to understand that we may be teaching a young driver today, is that young driver going to be safe 5 years from now? Those are difficult challenges. We try to work with our partners as much as possible. We engage in organizations like the CDC and others to try to help us measure. We're all about measurement ourselves, but it is a difficult challenge. And as we set the horizon for the Sustainable Development Goals, let's say, so how are we going to measure those 20 million service hours? How are those driving those 17 SDGs? We're still wrestling with that. We're still wrestling with that. And I'm happy to speak to anyone that has, answers to those questions. But it is a challenge. But we're relentless in trying to seek out ways that we can measure the impact beyond just straight arithmetic, right?
And I think one of the things that we're engaged with, because it is a challenge, is we're working with our partners to try to help build their capacity, because we're not going to come up with the numbers on our own. We're not going to do the work on our own, and we're not going to come up with the numbers on our own. So how do we help the partners that we work with improve their ability, or the industry as a whole, product donations? How do we work with other partners who are doing product donations to show not only did we give X dollars or X pounds of stuff, but we made this actual impact on these people? So how do we build the whole community to improve their ability to measure?
So I've got one last question. This is going to be the last comment in the general session room in terms of the panel conversations. You know what it's going to be in terms of what are we doing, or what could we do more of to run towards opportunities for communities, things that shape the future of your communities and your businesses. But while you're thinking about that last answer, and I'll start with you, Eduardo, if that's okay, and we'll come this way. I really just want to thank you for what you're doing, not only for the globe, but working with all the partners, the businesses, your staff, your employees, and the U.S. Chamber Foundation and the Florida Chamber Foundation for everything you do. So, Eduardo, running towards opportunities for communities.
I think that, for me, as I said earlier, trying to work more collectively, but also trying to bring along those small and medium-sized businesses, those women-owned businesses, those multicultural businesses. To me, I think that putting aside the moral obligation that we all have to do what we do, this is really about capturing value. And I think there's a lot of value in that segment of our communities.
Thank you. Rob?
I would say we started off yesterday talking about purpose, and I think it's easy to go and think about how we can find purpose or help our employees find purpose, but I would encourage each of us as individuals to look at what our own particular purpose is. And I shared last year here on the large stage about our diversity case around LGBT inclusion, and I specifically talked about my son and his husband, and it was the first time that I had gone out publicly and talked about this and the changes that had for our family. I've now given that talk 3 more times, and I'm doing it 2 more times by the end of the year, and this was something that I would not have thought about going out and doing publicly, but I stepped out a bit in faith And I think that's activating a purpose inside of me that I know is not only changing me, but hopefully it's telling a good story to others. So
that's excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Kim?
I have to follow that. That to be the last statement on the stage. That's really a lot of pressure, Mark. And Tony, I think for us, for Johnson & Johnson, breaking down some of those walls that we've built up over time to really align ourselves as a business. Our community impact group was aligned differently than the business that was aligned from our global public health, that was from our government affairs. So we've all picked a regional focus. We've all aligned those parties together to sit in the table. And we're also doing things internal to the organization. What are we doing cross-cutting for nurses? What are we doing cross-culture for midwives? What are we doing cross-culture for cross-enterprise for pediatricians? And how do we leverage each other in the work that we're doing? We're all doing great things, but we're not sharing that even internally because the business is doing one thing. And so how do we pull that together to focus and passion that aligned?
So running a chamber foundation, one of the easiest things I have to do is tell your stories. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for all the investments you make across the globe and in our organizations. And thank you each out here for everything that you do. Together, we're going to make a huge opportunity possible and move forward together. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, Ed, Tony, and Rob. That's it, guys. Now, we still have working sessions, some really good ones back in the breakout rooms. We hope that you'll join us for those. They go from 3 to 4:15. There's one I wanted to call out in particular. Elise from our staff is right here. She's leading an off-site working session. We're going to board a van of some kind, and we're going to take you over to the Well Building, where the American Society of Interior Designers are going to talk to us about healthy buildings. So very cool. See Elise back in the registration area for that. So again, I just want to remind everyone, the gala and the Corporate Citizenship Awards is not in this building, okay? Not in this building. We're not going to leave any staff here. It's not in this building. But we will be at the showroom, again, at 1099 14th Street for those of you who have already registered. I want to thank our sponsors, the Dow Chemical Company, Comcast, NBC Universal, DSM and FedEx, Gill Foundation, MGM, PNC, Viacom, America's Charities, JP Morgan Chase, my list is long, Global Impact, EY, the UN Foundation, and Nothing But Nets. And of course, this was not possible without our team. So again, the CCC team, thank you. Thank you very much. A lot of hard work went into this. We hope that we'll see everyone at the working sessions, at the gala, or at many of the events that we hold throughout the course of the year, including many that are already scheduled for 2018. Again, thank you all very much.